you've got a player like him and you want to win the league, play him.
Also gets criticised for and what fans will call being too conservative.
And he played a little diagonal ball into Wirtz and McAllister going through the middle as well. So he did everything. First thing is he goes like this and he gets everybody with him. So that's that thing about, herding cats. Let's go with that one.
We've got to stick with puppies in the bath now. Who needs Trent Alexander-Arnold when you've got Dominik Szoboszlai with the Hungarian slamming in a world-class free kick with just 7 minutes of normal time to go to give Liverpool a 1-0 victory over Arsenal, continue their perfect start to the season and give them the early run-in in the title race over the Gunners. I'm Will Pugh, that's Dean Scoggins, this is Tactics Exposed. Dino, one for the tactical purists, like yourself that one, and as always you've got 5 hidden tactical gems fans may or may not have noticed.
Yeah, very, very interesting stuff. And obviously the free kick we'll come on to. But number one, Arteta's Szob story. And it was not just about that amazing strike from Dominik Szoboszlai. Number two, park the van. Who needs a bus when you've got Virgil van Dijk? Number three is the Hungar Gains. We talked about the Hunger Games last time, but this was a bit better for Kerkez. Number four, how both midfields got lost in Arsenal's Bermuda triangle in midfield. And number five, Arteta got the Eze decision wrong.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. The Bermuda Triangle, for the Arsenal fans thinking this is just going to be a Liverpool loving, it's not. So make sure you stick around for the entire video. Dino, lots of, not criticism, but there was lots of excitement and build-up for this game. As often happens when two juggernauts meet, and Mikel Arteta in particular getting criticised for his somewhat more conservative approach, it was a moment of magic that divided the two teams in the end. Arne Slot said if you played that game in exactly the same fashion 10 more times, 8 of them would be draws. Have you looked at that game and been a bit deflated with it by everyone else, or were there bits in it that you saw which actually made it a much more interesting encounter than perhaps it appeared?
Well, I think it was more interesting for an eye like mine, who likes to not just watch the ball fly in the top corner, but see some of the little intricacies, as you mentioned as well. But yeah, look, they cancelled each other out, and Arne Slot made a really good point about rest defence, which we'll come on to in a second. And that's something that Liverpool didn't get right in their first game against Bournemouth. But I just feel like Arsenal, didn't go for it. And Liverpool were there for the taking. And you don't go to somewhere like Anfield and just win. You have to go somewhere like Anfield and play well, take some risks and then win. And they played very well. They did everything that was asked of them, but there was just something missing. And I think we'll come on to that later in the show for the Arsenal
Absolutely.
fans.
Well, Mikel Arteta's record at Anfield, of course, Dino, 6 games played.
0.
3 draws. 3 defeats.
0 wins. That's the thing. And the same as his record at the Etihad as well. So if you're going to win titles, you've got to go to these places and win games.
Absolutely. Well, if you are going to win titles, as Liverpool fans will be that little bit more convinced that they can do again this season, thanks to that man right there, Dominik Szoboszlai. As you said, not just the free kick, which was the moment of magic that divided these two teams, but he was generally, and I quote myself in our WhatsApp chat last night, mustered the entire game. Talk to me about the Szob story.
You're absolutely bang on. He was the best player on the pitch before even the free kick. And we talked about him in the Newcastle game because he played full-back in that as well. And there were some issues for Liverpool in midfield. Obviously, they were solved today because McAllister was playing. So there was McAllister and Gravenberch, which allows Szoboszlai to basically do the Trent Alexander-Arnold role. We did a whole show at the end of last year about what Liverpool are going to do without Trent Alexander-Arnold, how they might play when they buy someone like Frimpong, who they bought in, and he goes up the outside, and that means Salah cutting in and doing something different. But this was almost like Trent 2.0 that it was today. So, the Swiss Army knife of a midfield player. He's Hungarian, sorry, but you know what I mean.
The Hungarian Army knife. Yeah.
But, he did everything. It was in possession, it was out of possession, it was in shape, and then he does that, which is just sensational. Look, everyone's going to watch the free kick over and over again. 32.2 yards out, smashed into the top corner, unsavable. Trent Alexander-Arnold would have been proud of it. And I tell you what, Cristiano Ronaldo would have been proud of it as well. So absolute worldie.
Szoboszlai, by the way, says it's not even my greatest free kick.
Yeah.
He said when I played against Turkey for Hungary, which I've seen this morning, another absolute worldie. So he's obviously got it in his locker.
Well, and he said in his interview afterwards, he's been waiting for someone to say, you're on free kicks, mate. So, and he's obviously been practicing a lot. So fair play for that. But one thing I just want to show, so again, Arne Slot talked about rest defence, okay? And where Liverpool really struggled in that first game at Anfield against Bournemouth's bomb-on counter-attack, was the ball dropping on the edge of the area. And we talked a lot about being in a 3-2-5 shape or a 2-3-5 shape, you know, and I talk about that all the time. And that's as important in attack as it is in defence in breaking down those counter-attacks or stopping those counter-attacks happening. And rest defence, as Arne Slot talks about it, is when you're comfortable in a position where your creative players can be creative, but you're also covered against that. And Szoboszlai nailed this, absolutely nailed it. It's the inside pocket position. And again, Trent Alexander-Arnold used to do it very well because he wanted to cross the ball from there. So he's automatically in that position. So whether it's on the halfway line or right up in the final third, it's an inside right position, which we're going to show a grab of, where Szoboszlai just picked that up. And it must have been 6 or 7 times the ball's either headed clear by Arsenal or half cleared or the counter-attack's on. He's there to pounce on top of it. Right. Absolutely brilliant. The
just
other
quickly,
thing,
Dean, sorry, just on that, is that also, we talk a lot in this studio about Mikel Arteta and his absolute obsession with Arsenal not being beaten in transition, i.e. other teams counter-attacking against them, which is kind of the same thing that he also gets criticised for and what fans will call being too conservative. Is this a similar sort of thing?
It is a similar sort of thing, yeah. But I mean, what you've got here is because the first week, Slot was worried about both fullbacks bombing on. Sure. And they had Frimpong going one way and Kerkez going the other. He made it, was at pains to point out one can go.
And that's what made them look a little bit susceptible to counter-attack against Bournemouth.
Yeah, and they were a bit lopsided, okay? So this is a bit like that. But what it also is that because he's comfortable as a midfield player, as Trent Alexander-Arnold was, wherever you want him to play, that it's not actually being negative in that sense. It's then that Salah can go, he's there to receive the ball back and maybe cross it. So he's not just occupying a space. He's a threat there, and look, he might have stuck one in the top corner from there as well, in open play. But it wasn't, and also on the halfway line, we often saw Konate and him not parallel to each other along the line of the pitch horizontally, but they were vertically in line, because that means that either Gyökeres has to go with Konate and then Martinelli's with Szoboszlai, which means the pass into Salah is on, or the other way round. If Szoboszlai is then free in that area, he can then leave Martinelli and go forward. So it's a positive thing. It's not just about counter-attacking. And Szoboszlai just got the balance of attack and defence from a full-back position absolutely perfect. And then we've also got to add his passing. Yep. I mean, there was that, 60-yard, maybe even more ball to Florian Wirtz over the top.
Minutes, wasn't it?
Unbelievable pass. And then there was also a couple where he came into that midfield pocket and he played a little diagonal ball into Wirtz and McAllister going through the middle as well. So he did everything. It was a stunning performance. And on his heat map and touch map, we see that it's generally his touches show that he was in a generic right-back position. But the heat map shows that little pocket position that I've been talking about, where he's hovering around that area. And I think that Arsenal, again, we'll come on to this in a minute, if Arsenal had been a bit more ambitious, that position of Szoboszlai wouldn't have been so easy for him. He would have been looking the other way a little bit more. But as it was, he was just there as the free man, comfortable in possession, comfortable out of possession. I mean, not often you say 10 out of 10 performances, but that was pretty close.
It was exactly that. It's interesting as well, because at Newcastle and in the review show that we did for that, we said how much better Liverpool looked when he stepped up into midfield in that game. Was there any sort of standout differences, you think? Because arguably Arsenal, although to be fair, Newcastle gave Liverpool an extremely good game and played outstanding football at St James's, you would suggest that of the two opponents and the two games in which Szoboszlai maybe struggled in that more unfamiliar position in right-back than centre midfield is to him, you'd have thought it might be the other way around?
Yeah, I think there's three things there. You're spot on. It's a good question. Now, the three things is Konate had a much better game.
Absolutely spot on.
Absolutely,
yeah,
much
100%.
better game at centre-back. The second thing is that I don't think that Arsenal were brave enough, because Newcastle put Anthony Gordon or Harvey Barnes way up the pitch, which meant Szoboszlai had to come back with them. And Livramento went forward to push on Szoboszlai. Yeah, do you remember we talked about that? Yeah. So that meant that Szoboszlai's position was deeper than it was in this game, because Newcastle were braver. And the third thing, as I mentioned, was McAllister. So in that previous game, you know, McAllister wasn't playing. Gravenberch didn't have his sort of anchor pal there. And this, right from the start, you could see that they were as a two in midfield. And that means that Kerkez can go one way, Szoboszlai can go the other, and they can rotate and pivot around those two in the middle. So, yeah, brilliant all round from Liverpool, although they weren't as great in attacking positions.
So it feels like there was other factors at play maybe that were either hindering him at Newcastle or benefiting him. But yeah, absolutely mustard, and what a way to cap that performance off. One man, Dino, park the van. Virgil van Dijk again. We're waxing lyrical about him once more. You said one of the most iconic tactics exposed phrases you've come up with so far, that against Newcastle, Virgil van Dijk was like trying to herd 3 puppies in a bath, whatever the hell that meant.
Keep 3 puppies in a bath.
Keep 3 puppies in a bath, yeah. We sort of settled, I think, that herding cats might have been a more appropriate phrase. However, he was superb again. Like you say, though, Ibrahima Konate next to him, that was a transformational performance from him as well.
And Kerkez was better the other side, which we'll come on to Kerkez in a minute. But the thing about Van Dijk is you almost take it for granted.
Absolutely.
And you know, I almost like him making a mistake at times, because it proves he's human. But you know, he is just sensational. And look, he didn't actually have to make a tackle in the whole game, which is remarkable in itself. But it goes back to the old adage of a good centre-half never gets his shorts dirty.
Bobby Moore, exactly
never
like
had to wash his shorts, right? Okay? And that's the one I always used to say about the difference between Rio Ferdinand and John Terry, is that Rio came off with clean shorts and John Terry came out like he'd been on Hackney Marshes. But, you know, Van Dijk was just so good. And there's a couple of things there's the obvious stuff, right? Which is that he wins duels, he's great in the air, he's physical, right? Obvious, don't need to go into that. There's the two things for me with the decision making in the starting position. The one thing I've got to be honest, I felt a bit sorry for Gyökeres, because he made some great runs again and Arsenal don't find him. And a lot of that is because Van Dijk knows when to pick him up and knows when to leave him to Konate. Because if he's leaving him to Konate, he knows he's covering the pass. And if he thinks Gyökeres is a danger, he comes back in with him straight away and doubles up on him. And then the ball gets played into Gyökeres' feet a couple of times when Arsenal were eventually brave enough in the second half to do it and play the ball through the midfield into Gyökeres' feet. And Van Dijk just goes, no, mine. Bang, just hits him from behind. Once he fouled him, I think Gyökeres fouled Van Dijk because Van Dijk got in front of him. And then the other time, Van Dijk just shrugged him out of the way and got there first. Absolutely immense. The other one is when they're in a deeper line of defence. First thing is he goes like this and he gets everybody with him. So that's that thing about, you know, herding cats. Let's go that one.
No, we've got to stick with puppies in the bath now.
Keeping that like that. And then the other one was Arsenal played this really good move where they played up the right-hand side and it went round the back, and Van Dijk actually makes 2 blocks in one move, because he's in the line for the cutback, because where do you want to be? When a cross is about to come in, centre half, in line with your front post, right? He's got the cross blocked, which means the goalkeeper doesn't have to come off his line. Then it doesn't come that position, it gets cut back. He goes, makes the first block, then it gets passed along, he makes the second block. And there are about 4 or 5 players around, and he sort of just ghosts between people to make those blocks. And it's all because his starting position is immaculate. And also just to make a point, we said about Szoboszlai, we said about Konate, and we said about Kerkez. Also just a note for Gomez as well, because Gomez comes on when Konate gets injured or cramp. This moment here was key.
Yep.
Eze comes into the area when eventually Arteta brought Eze on, and he puts his arm on his shoulder there. You can just see his arm on his right shoulder. And if he'd have given it more, as per the Man United game, probably a penalty.
More of a pull.
More of a pull or a push. But he just does enough as a defender to give the attacker enough off balance, and Eze falls over. I actually thought Eze should have scored, but the defender does really, really well. And then there was another occasion where they do get in behind Liverpool-Arsenal. The cross comes in, and the one time that Arsenal evade Van Dijk, Gomez is there just to nudge Gyökeres at the front post off the ball. So comes on 2 moments right at the end, and again, a clean sheet performance from Liverpool.
Absolutely. Well, you only have to look, I think it was the Bournemouth game, wasn't it? Where exactly what you're saying about Van Dijk, everyone just takes it for granted. There was that one thing where he kind of became a meme briefly, wasn't there? There was that still image of him seemingly totally ignoring where the ball was because he was so focused on his man. But again, it's easy to give him a bit of stick for that. Maybe he could have been a little bit more aware, but he's relying on his defensive partner to do his job.
Yeah.
But he is pretty much, on the whole, pretty immaculate.
Absolutely unreal, and he's the glue that holds them together. And look, we can see that Gomez can come on and replace Konate if he's injured. We can see that Szoboszlai can replace Frimpong. We've got cover with Robertson and Kerkez. Van Dijk gets injured. So it's a different matter.
Just really quickly then, Gyökeres is getting quite a lot of grief, to be fair, from Arsenal fans and football fans more generally. Obviously got off the mark against Leeds, a couple of goals there, happy days. He's had 2 fairly stern tests defensive-wise against Manchester United away and Liverpool away, the 2 of the more difficult games he'll face the entire season. I think it's a bit harsh because he was coming up against some really good Liverpool defending, or?
Yeah, he has come up against 2 sets of very good defensive, United defended well at Old Trafford, okay? So, yeah, Leeds at home is a different kettle of fish. And look, am I going to say it? Flat track bully at the moment. Looks a bit, and it's early days, maybe that's a bit harsh. But he didn't look physically, dangerous to Van Dijk or Konate. And a couple of times even he went over to the right and left back position, and Kerkez and Szoboszlai bullied him off the ball as well. But having said that, he's had 0 service in those 2 games. Arsenal, we can't criticise finishing and strikers unless the ball's coming in the box to give those opportunities.
If he's missing 4 chances a game,
exactly.
Totally different, isn't it?
Precisely. So yes, I'd like to see a bit more from him physically and holding the ball up. But we can't say that we can't give him the opportunities, because against Leeds he shows what happens when those opportunities come. So they've got to give him more possession. Absolutely.
Right, Dino, number 3, Hungar Gains, Milos Kerkez. We gave him a little bit, not a grilling, but just, you gave your usual level of high-level analysis, saying that there were some rooms for improvement, right? Yeah. And some concerns among Liverpool fans, particularly in your inbox, concerns about whether Liverpool had bought a dud or not. But this game really stepped up when it mattered as well, and him along with Konate, much better for Liverpool alongside Van Dijk.
Yeah, the Sun editor was texting me asking me if I
thought that revealed or not.
No, she'd be all right with that. She wanted to know if they'd bought a dud or not, and she was a bit worried in that performance. And look, I think that's absolutely valid, because the amount we waxed lyrical about him on our transfer show, for example, when Liverpool bought him, he didn't perform in that way in those first 2 games. I think that's fair to say. This was very, very good. I thought Noni Madueke was Arsenal's most dangerous player. Kerkez dealt with him really, really well. And there were 2 things to pull out in this. One is that in the first 2 games really, I thought that he didn't play his way, as in like a bombing on fullback. He was a bit unsure when to stick or twist, when to go. And obviously with Szoboszlai nailing those decisions one side, making it a 3 at the back or inverting when he needed to, that makes Kerkez's job a little bit easier, because he's now understanding that there's a 3 there, and don't underestimate McAllister and Gravenberch in between, which allows the fullbacks to go. So Kerkez, I think it was 37, 38 seconds on the clock that the ball gets in that position straight away and he goes. And what that means is Madueke's got a job on. He's thinking, well, I've got to go the other way as well. So this is not just about Kerkez defending me. This is about then me going backwards. And then, of course, exactly. And because, as we talked about, where Arteta is cautious and conservative, he's not going to say to Madueke, "Now go on, cheat a little bit. Yep. Stay up there and make him think about, let's see if we back our midfielders to win the ball and leave, like Man United did with Mbeumo, yeah? Man United left him up there.
And Liverpool do that with Salah?
Liverpool do that with Salah, exactly, which was another reason we didn't see any of Calafiori in attack, because Calafiori stayed in that position back there. So there was that cat and mouse game. Again, I was expecting it to be cat and mouse in midfield, but this was a little bit that way. And Kerkez does that brilliantly, but then also will show another grab of where the ball goes over the top and and his starting position is perfect. He's alongside Madueke. His body position is, I'm going to beat you in a race. And even if the ball goes to Madueke, it was a great ball from David Raya, by the way, who hit a couple of those peaches in the game. But it was just the fact of, I'm going to beat you one-on-one. He won 6 out of his 7 duels, I think it was. His tackling was great. And Madueke had a good game, but didn't get any joy out of Kerkez.
That was exactly my next point, Dino, to be fair. Madueke, we spoke about before. Lots of Arsenal fans getting involved in the comments, and a few of them, to be fair to them, called it right. Eze won't start in this game. It'll be Martinelli, Madueke. Bearing in mind, let's not forget the petition that Arsenal fans started against Noni Madueke turning up at the club. You lot know who you are. And he looked very, very, very professional yesterday. I thought probably Arsenal's best player, maybe alongside Declan Rice.
I thought Declan Rice was their best player, yeah. And the back four were very good, but he was the bravest.
Yeah.
I think that's the best thing to say. He was the bravest player in possession. And look, they're going to miss Saka, right? Every team in the world's going to miss Bukayo Saka. But Noni Madueke did a really good job of, Saka light, if you see what I mean. And that's, I don't mean to be disrespectful to him for that, because nobody's on that side of the field other than Salah is on Saka's level. But I thought he had a really, really good game. And there was a picture we just flashed up there just of Merino tracking back on Kerkez as well. And it's like, you can see by the grimace on his face that he's having to chase Kerkez a lot as well. And he was a problem for Arsenal yesterday, Merino, and we'll come on to that in a minute. But yeah, Kerkez, proper left-back's performance. Again, part of the clean sheet. And also, I think they've played a very tough away game in Newcastle. They've played a very tough home game in Arsenal. And don't underestimate Bournemouth, by the way, as I saw to my detriment on Saturday. But they only got 5 points in those 3 games last year, Liverpool. They got 9 this year. So they're +4, and we're going to see more of Kerkez in attacking positions in games to come.
Yeah, intriguing, isn't it? Because the first 2 games of the season, Bournemouth and Newcastle, there were lots of questions going, are you sure they look a bit defensively fragile? All of a sudden in this game against what's supposed to be one of the most dangerous attacks in the league, they looked absolutely imperious. Right, Dino, let's talk about Arsenal. Point number 4, Arsenal's, and this is a Dean Scoggins classic, is this one, Arsenal's Bermuda Triangle in midfield. Talk to me.
Yeah, there was a triangle in midfield, and the reason I'm calling it the Bermuda Triangle is because both midfields got a bit lost in attack. It was cancelling each other out in the extreme. So we'll show the grabs of it where, and this, I feel sorry for the grabs guys and the graphics guys, because I could have done 25 of these, right? But I've been a little bit selective. So Arsenal get in a position where either Declan Rice played much, much deeper than he normally does. He was almost inside the centre-backs most times, picking up the ball. Obviously, that's an instruction from Arteta. Obviously, that's a tactic they want to play. Florian Wirtz, they've got to be worried about. There are a lot of times where he was close to Florian Wirtz. I thought Rice was excellent, by the way. Defensively, his usual combative self, showing that he's probably one of the best, if not the best, number 6 in the league. And he doesn't really play there for Arsenal most of the time. But what happened is that a lot of the time, him and Zubimendi were deep, and Merino was then the one forward. So that's the triangle we're talking about, okay? And basically what they did is they form a triangle either around Wirtz to stop him going forwards, or around Liverpool's midfield 2 of McAllister and Gravenberch to try and stop them playing out through Wirtz. But what that means is they've always got an extra man back. And so, yes, it cancelled Liverpool out, but the amount of times that Arsenal had the ball, especially Zubimendi and Rice, and Gabriel's good on the ball. He's standing there not really knowing what to do. Obviously, Saliba went off, so I thought Mosquera did pretty well, to be honest. Yep. But again, maybe they're not going to trust him as much on the ball. But, they've got Timber as a right back, Calafiori as a left back, comfortable in possession, and they're dropping another midfielder in. And so this triangle was moving around midfield in different positions and just cancelling each other out. And it's really important. I should have mentioned this in the Van Dijk section, but Van Dijk made the most forward progressive passes completed in the entire game of any player. Right, and that's mainly because Van Dijk was the one taking the risks, the passes to go through the lines. And if Arsenal was sat in that sort of rest defence, as we talked about again, to stop Liverpool, I just kept looking at it thinking, they've got another man there. They've got another man. They weren't brave enough to go man v man, so that if they win the ball back, it goes to your 10 and then the 10 goes through. So, and Merino a couple of times, I'm sorry, but he's going like this, like, don't pass it to me. I mean, again, I had it 3 or 4 times. There's one grab, he's in the 10 position. Rice looks to play it to him and he's going like this. And Marino's going, no, not me. Because I mean, what? I don't want the ball. What? I mean, it's just bizarre. And I just feel a little bit like they made a decision. It's Anfield. I know you've got to compete with Liverpool, but Arsenal are the best defence in the league, if not the best defence in Europe, right? So trust Gabriel, trust Calafiori, trust Timber, trust Saliba/Mosquera to say we can go man v man against Salah, we can go man v man against Ekitike. So therefore, free somebody up in midfield. Declan Rice can deal with Wirtz on his own. You've just bought Zubimendi. If he's not good enough to deal with Wirtz on his own, then why did you buy him? Okay, so that 3v2 that Arsenal, and sometimes it was 3v1, so therefore Arsenal, who did play well, all of the players, you can't say that any of them did badly in the game. I just feel like Arteta was so concerned about his 4-4-2 rest defence, which becomes 4-5-1 when they're out of possession, that they never committed enough players forward.
2 things. Don't think we didn't notice that accent you did when you were doing your Marino impression just then.
Did I do that?
No. I don't know. Apparently he was born in Paris. But the other thing, Dean, I would say, lots of criticism towards Arteta, about exactly what you've done an excellent job in highlighting then. I think what always happens when more pragmatic managers, or, not that Arteta's one of those, but when he employs a more pragmatic style, in an away game against their main title rivals, ultimately, if Szoboszlai doesn't bang that absolutely world-level elite free kick into the top corner and Arsenal get a point, the narrative is totally different, and it's that Arsenal have got the better result out of the two. It's also easy, isn't it, to go, heard a few people on the radio this morning on the phone in on TalkSport Breakfast, and sort of saying, you should have started Eze from the off, £70 million, all the usual stuff, and take one of the defensive players off. But there is a world where that happens and Arsenal lose 1 or 2-0 because the balance is off. And that's what we talk about it every week on Tactics, right? The tactics for managers in the Premier League is about striking the balance, isn't it, between attack and defence. Is it not just easy to say, all bar one magical free kick, Arsenal were this far away, 7 minutes away from getting a point, and that would have been the better result? Yeah.
I can see that argument, but again, I go back to 0 wins at the Etihad and 0 wins at Anfield, 0 titles. And, I feel a little bit like, and Liverpool approached it in this way, is that it would be a more damaging result for Liverpool to lose at home than in that title situation.
Or to not win?
Or to not win. But I don't know. Losing at home to a title rival is bad news because you've then got to go to their place later on. So I actually think that Liverpool would have been more comfortable with the draw than Arsenal because Arsenal, Liverpool were thinking, well, they got that point last year. So therefore, we won the title last year. And I think that Liverpool will blow some of the lesser teams away. Which is the problem that Arsenal have had throughout the year. So, but this question brings us on to point 5 quite comfortably, is the Eze decision, the easy decision. It should have been an easy decision. We did the Tactics Team Talk show in preview about the cat and mouse with Eze and the tactics that Liverpool will have to employ to stop Eze, okay? That Szoboszlai thing that I talked about at the start, McAllister and Gravenberch, they were expecting Eze to play. Or they were expecting Odegaard to play, one or the other. And so, look, I can see, and there were lots of comments, and thanks for the comments about Martinelli, and lots of you were right that Martinelli will play. But I am adamant that he got it wrong, because if Odegaard's fit, or fit enough to start anyway, because obviously he was only fit enough for the bench, then the Martinelli decision in Odegaard as the 10 is understandable, because you've got your ball player, you've got your difference maker in that number 10 position. But to leave Eze out when Odegaard's not fit to start and to go with Marino just doesn't make sense to me at all. We'll show where Eze picks up the ball in possession. He was dangerous. They made more forward passes and more box entries when Eze and Odegaard were on in that last 20 minutes than they did in the first 70. You know, it was just a different game when they came on. And yes, it was more open, which might give Arteta more heart palpitations, but they looked more dangerous. And look, yes, you make the point about the free kick and the moment of magic, but I would point to the fact that Liverpool had, in the first game against Newcastle, right, Gravenberch scored a great goal, right, difference maker. McAllister, we know, can bang it in the top corner, right? Then they've got Ekitike, Gakpo and Salah as all those difference makers, okay? Yeah. People capable of coming up with that moment of magic. And then, by the way, Szoboszlai did it as well, okay? Arsenal have got Declan Rice from a dead ball, perhaps, and then in attack, Gyökeres, they're hoping, right? And then
Madueke,
yes. And Martinelli, but Martinelli has come under a lot of criticism. So I would say that Liverpool almost got their reward for having the more difference makers on the field. And yes, it took that amazing free kick, but I just feel like you don't play. I mean, Eberechi Eze is a phenomenal footballer, and the number of times where possession broke down around the edge of the areas, and then that one pass, which then if you've got a player who takes it on the half turn and runs at people, and all of a sudden defences, rest defences or counter defences, whatever you look at, are all over the place, and he can make that happen. That's why I wanted him to sign for Spurs. That's why I was so desperate for him to sign for Spurs. But then Marino is not wanting the ball in that position, and the number of times where Zubimendi and Rice have got midfield locked down, and there's this big hole in the middle, and it's crying out for Eze or Odegaard, and whether that's Eze coming off the left or starting in the middle, I just feel like it was a decision he got wrong.
Well played for swerving the Marino impression that time.
Thank you.
One thing, Dino, I will say though, the reason Eze's been playing football, he's been training, he conducted himself extremely professionally while all the transfer noise was going on, while he was still at Palace, turning up to training, same as Mark Gay here has done, right? Unlike the polar opposite to Alexander Isak and Johan Visser, of course. So he kept turning up. He's been playing for Crystal Palace, played on the opening day at Chelsea, of course, banged the free kick that he was unlucky to have robbed off of him. By the way, has anyone checked whether there were any Liverpool players within 1 metre of the wall when Szoboszlai's free kick went in?
I don't think it matters, does it?
Well, I think we should have a check. But what I will say, though, with Eze, the only reason, because he's been playing a lot, that Arteta must have felt that he couldn't play him in that game from the off. Because it's certainly the most important game of the season so far for Arsenal. They're their biggest title rivals. It's away. The only reason he wouldn't have thrown him in, and I would expect you to appreciate this more than anyone, is that there is so much tactical information to take on board, both on and off the ball, that he simply felt Eze hadn't have enough time to introduce him from the off.
I can get that, but I would almost say that I think that, I'm sure Eberechi Eze has watched every episode of Tactics Exposed,
Right.
And so he's seen how Arsenal set up. I'm joking, I know, but he knows how Arsenal set up. He'll have watched them. That footballers other than Ben White watch a lot of football, right? And they watch videos, they know what's going on, and I would say that was the case if it was to play instead of Martinelli.
You're at real risk of watering down.
No.
Here,
Honestly, I think that if it was the left-hand side position and it was whether you're going to be against Szoboszlai, what you need to do to stop Salah, where I want you to be in those positions, I can absolutely buy that argument. But when Odegaard's ruled out and you've got the free roll when we've got possession, and then out of possession, we rest defence in a 4-4-2 where Gyökeres comes in, you're alongside him, and one of you presses, but not both. To give you one bit of yes on that is that Odegaard normally leads the Arsenal press. So they wouldn't have been able to get Eze to do that so quickly. And perhaps that's what Marino was doing. But to tell you the truth, they didn't really press very much, Arsenal. So I'm not totally sure I buy that either. But look, you've got a player like him and you want to win the league, play him.